see on the flyer that we do have some in-house trainings, and those are all around the follow-up data that we do for workability and indicator 14. But you've told us in surveys and different conversations that we've had with some of you that you would really like to become more familiar with some different assessment tools. So those are those other Thursdays, and they are all about assessment tools. It's an assessment series of sorts. So today is one of those Thursdays. So let me start by introducing our presenter, which is Belkis Schoisel-Praslin. And she will be sharing with us a super awesome overview of the O-Net Interest Profiler. Some of you may remember Belkis from a training that she did for us back in October on transition planning for English learners. And then also in 2021, she shared with us the TAG assessment tool. So lucky us, she is back with us today, and she is an assistant professor and director of the Center for Teacher Development at the University of Pacific in Stockton. And before that, she was a special ed high school teacher. She was also a transition coordinator in Washington, D.C. Her areas of expertise and research are all around special education transition and teacher preparation. So before I hand it over to Belkis, today's seminar is being recorded. And if you have any questions, just please ask us using the Q&A, and also check out the chat box where I will post the resources organizer. This same organizer will be shared among the 4 different assessment tool presentations that Belkis will be doing for us, so that at the end of her 4 presentations, you have one resource organizer that has everything in there, the slide decks and the different information about the tools that she's sharing. And in the last few minutes, I will post a link to the survey. The survey link is also in that resource organizer, but we really do enjoy reading your responses to that survey, and it helps us improve all of the PD that we do. So thanks again for being here. And with that, I will turn it over to the awesome Belkis.
Thank you, Anne. Hi, everyone. I'm very, very happy to be with you all today. Let me get my screen. I learned a new way to do PowerPoint slides and also not lose everyone, which is great. So hi, if I know Anne introduced me, and thank you so much. But again, my name is Belkis Schoisel-Praslin. I have a very long name, and everybody just called me Belkis, so please feel free to just call me Belkis. I'm very excited to go over the different transition assessments and take more of a deep dive with them with you all. And so this first one is one of my favorites. I'm really excited to do this with you all, because if you can tell, I really like transition assessments. Everybody has a weird thing. All right, so we're going to be going over the O-Net Interest Profiler today, and some of the additional resources that come with the O-Net. So we're just going to look at, or not just going to, no, we are going to do a quick introduction to the session, go over the goals. And then I always like to establish some background information on transition assessments in general from an IDEA or a legal perspective. And that's the hill that I will die on, and you'll see why. And then we'll go straight into the O-Net. I'll give you the big overview, but we are going to take some time to do it ourselves, to get familiar with it, and to then translate what score reports or what comes out of the O-Net Interest Profiler into an actual IEP, and then into transition planning and possible activities to do with students, either yourselves or suggesting it to other instructors and teachers as well. So, sorry, let me move my little screens here. Like I said, we're going to go over the O-Net Interest Profiler itself, which is the actual assessment part, but this is all part of a website, or a larger site called, I think I just read My Next Move, sorry. And so the My Next Move provides a bunch of resources that go along with the O-Net. So it's not just an assessment that we access, an assessment that also hosts a myriad of other things that we can use within the same website. And then we're going to do how to translate those results from this interest profiler into an actual transition plan, and looking at the present levels and goals section primarily. All right, so before we get there, just establishing that basic ground knowledge that we should all have as people who work in transition, but some of us are new, some of us may not be so familiar with the literature. I completely understand. I spent all day reading about it, but as a teacher, or as a transition coordinator, this information was not something I was like very aware of. So I like to just make sure everyone is on the same page. When it comes to transition assessments, when we're talking about students who are under IDEA and they're getting special education services, we need to make sure that we are administering transition assessments annually. So not depending on one that was done a year ago or 3 years ago, we're doing them every single year. And then on top of this, we're doing transition assessments every single year, but we're using more than one. And I completely understand that there is this like want and need to use one assessment that does it all for you. And while it's great when we can find those, it also may not present the best picture. And from a legal perspective, it is it's considered a best practice to use more than one. That being said, more than one also means that one of those should be considered a formal assessment. That's my little pie there to tell you it's formal. And just big overview, and you're welcome to look at this and kind of feel free to ask me any questions. I spent a lot of time looking at formal and informal assessments. But a formal assessment is one that we can say has evidence, research-based evidence to tell us that the results it's going to produce are going to be both valid and reliable. So the test is consistently measuring what it says it's going to measure. And that's exactly what we're describing, and we have evidence to back that up. So that's what we describe as a formal assessment. Informal assessments don't have that same level of that research-based evidence, but that does not mean they're bad. So please don't think that they're bad. So again, we want more than one assessment a year. We need them every year. One of those has to be formal. I do that to say that the My Next Move and the ONET, the two that go together, it's a formal assessment. There's a little tie at the top. It's not a bow tie, it's a traditional tie. So I'm going to put this, I have it right here, just kidding. I'm going to put this first link in the chat, and honestly, we will be working out of this one a lot. So just make sure you can access it and open it. If not, it is mynextmove.org. So this is your first homepage, and really where you can do pretty much everything you need. The My Next Move and the ONET, the reasons we like to use it is that it is a very interactive tool, and it is very much focused on career exploration, almost entirely and solely career exploration. And so the reason I'm directing you towards the page with all the information instead of just where the assessment part lives is because the My Next Move site has over 900 different careers listed and available for people to explore. And each of those has information related to like tasks that need to be done, skills related to this job, salary information, videos that give you information about them. There's so much within there for each and every single one of these careers, over the 900 that they have. And so I wanted to bring you here for a couple of different reasons. One of those being that sometimes we have students who know for sure they're going to be a doctor. It's like there's a lot of different doctors. Let's look at careers with keywords. We can look at doctor and it's going to give us a bunch of information, all the different types of doctors. And then we can also look at careers by industry. So that's that like middle orange box there. And the careers by industry are these big groups of industry. So let's say we have a student who's interested in agriculture and they want to work in this world. We can look at all the different careers that they have listed there with just agriculture. And then that last box in the little purple on the right-hand side is the actual interest profiler. And that's where we're going to go next. But I wanted to make sure you know where everything basically lives on this page. All right. So like I said, this purple box is where we're going. But before we get there, if you've ever questioned like all the different types of assessments, we know that some are interest profilers or career or like exploration things like the one we're going to look at today. And then others are more concrete and they're asking very, very specific questions. The reason we look at interest profilers specifically, even though they leave you sometimes with like bigger or broader strokes of like what an interest might be, is because we often get students who have very big, beautiful dreams that may not always appear to be realistic, at least in the perspective of educators who work with a lot of students who have a lot of big dreams. And when when a child, anybody is very young, it's perfectly fine and wonderful to have this period of they're all going to be famous TikTok stars, and they're going to go to the pro sports league, and they're going to do all of these great things. Everybody's going to be a prima ballerina this year. It's amazing. However, as the student gets older, if they haven't actually done anything towards those interests, but this is the only thing that they know of when you talk about future options or what they want to do when they grow up or where they want to live or be, then this is something we call fluff. Their goals for themselves have too much fluff or have fluff that don't necessarily match with the activities that they're engaging in right now. And so an interest profiler is very good at helping us get rid of some of that fluff, move things away that don't quite make sense or need to be explored in other stuff. So my favorite image here is the fluff scale. As students get older, we want them to be able to have much honed in idea of things that they really like and are actually interested in doing, instead of saying, I'm going to go to the NFL, but they don't play football and they don't like being with other people. And even though they love football as a sport, that might not be the world's best thing for them. And so I always, not always, but I like to kind of make the case of why we would use something like an interest profiler. Another thing to note is when we would use an interest profiler. There's so many different types of transition assessments available, which is not something we can say in a lot of things in special education. There's not a million different types of special education assessments that you need for all the specific things, but there are quite a bit in transition, which is wonderful. And then deciding which one to choose or when you should use one versus the other is sometimes kind of difficult. So we'll rely on the things that we already know how to do. And so when you think about something like the ONET or any kind of other interest profiler or interest exploration tool, you just want to kind of imagine the types of scenarios that this would be useful for. So the ONET specifically is for career exploration. It's great at career exploration. There are other related skills you can pull out from there, but you really want to focus on career here. And when we're looking at where does this ONET translate towards the IEP, you can use it for the education and training and also the employment sections. It actually would inform both, and we'll look at some of those together in a little bit. So some example scenarios of when you should choose or when you might want to choose the ONET is if you have a student who truly doesn't know what careers they might be interested in. And we get these students all the time. What is the word career? They've never heard of it. Or they've had one career, they want to do exactly what their parent does, but they actually don't show a lot of interest in that area. That would be like a scenario number 2, or a student may know what they're interested in, but we might encourage them to explore other options or to look deeper into the option that they have and figure out why it is they like those jobs. Maybe there are other jobs or careers related to those that they might want to look further into. That would be also viable possibilities. Another way to use this ONET is with a small group or a whole class. As long as everyone has access to their own computer or survey. I know a lot of students now have Chromebooks or like their own dedicated laptops or tablets. If this is something that is feasible for like the classroom environment, then I would say it actually makes a really great small group or whole class activity. It can even be done in lots of different ways. We'll look over this. So before we get into it, and I promise we're gonna spend way more time actually doing things than we are talking or hearing me talk this time. I want to show you just what the ONET looks like if you haven't had a chance to go in yourself yet. So the ONET, the reason I like it so much is because although there are actually 60 questions that it asks, because it's color blocked and because it uses smiley faces instead of the traditional strongly disagree to strongly agree kind of scale, for students, this seems to go so much quicker than we assume it will. And then on top of that, one of the things I love about transition assessments is that we can accommodate them however we need to. So if a student needs a screen reader or speech to text, or if they need somebody to just read it out loud for them, then we can do that, and that's fine. And you'd be surprised how quickly this goes. And I think it's a lot about the way it's presented. So smiley faces are really easy to interpret. Either we really liked it, we kind of liked it, or we don't like it. And then the colors there help just kind of break up the monotony of the questions. And students are just ranking where they kind of fit or feel about these type of jobs. once the questions are done, the score results will come out in a type that's called the RISEC, if you are familiar with this. You'll see this a lot in career exploration things, RISEC. This is just a nice or an easy way to kind of group careers or interests into big buckets. And so they use these 6 big buckets for to describe like the type of interests the students generally have. And so it's realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Depending on the answers, the ONET is going to rank the students' responses based on what the areas that they liked the most, according to where they put their smiley faces. And then in this section as well, the ONET is also going to ask what type of job preparation is the student looking for? And that is such a great question because I don't think we always ask that before we look into a career. And that is to say, if a student is interested in going to college and getting a full degree and maybe even an advanced degree, there are the jobs that they will see, if that's the option they choose, are going to be very different than the jobs they will choose or the jobs they will see if they choose little to no preparation, which means like maybe on the job training, maybe a certificate or an apprenticeship. They will be in the same career line or in the same like bucket of realistic jobs or investigative jobs, but they will differentiate by level of preparation needed. And for some students, that's very helpful because if they have this idea that they want to be doctors, but they also are not willing to do the amount of preparation needed to get to that career, then we can look at other areas instead. So once you've kind of decided in those sections, and you can play around, go back and forth a lot, there's no reason not to. The ONET is going to give you a long list of jobs based on your responses, and they rank them from like your best fit to your great fit to like half a fit. It'll show you there. There are also some additional symbols like a little sun to tell you that this is a job that's like on the rise. It has a really positive outlook. It's growing. There's another symbol there for apprenticeships, and I forget which the last one is, but they have a little legend so you can see them as well. Those things might be of interest to people, especially those of us who are kind of thinking long term and we want to help students plan for a very long career in an area. Then we may want to look at something like an earth driller. I didn't even know that word. One of my favorite things about this part of the page is that it actually shares the titles of jobs. So many students have this idea when you ask them what they want to do, honestly, regardless of age, you are going to hear a lot of big titles: doctor, lawyer, teacher, whatever their parents do, firefighter, policeman. And then within all of those jobs, there's a million different titles we can have or that can have, meaning that a person can go in lots of different directions. Our students don't generally know that. Some definitely do. Others this is like a brand new, they've never thought about that. That's the job was teacher. And for the most part, when you're young, that's okay. But also to know that the world of teacher is far more expansive than just one title. There's a lot that you can do within this world. And so this is one of my favorite, like, oh, I didn't know that there were such jobs that existed that had these names. That might be really interesting. So once you've chosen one of these jobs to look at, and you can select as many and print them, save them, share them however you like, it gives you this like one pager, and I split it up here for us to look at. The one pager is really great. At the top, it gives us quick information about like what this job is, what the job would generally require you to do. Most of them that I've come across have a video to give you kind of 1 to 2 minute overview. And then when you come down on this page, it will break down in these different areas. So it's saying that this job of dental laboratory technicians, these are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they generally need to have to do well at this position or in this job. And then it also gives you level of education needed, job outlook. So we want to know that this is a job that how much it pays. That's incredibly important for future planning. Is this good enough? What do we do from here? And then it also gives you related careers so they can navigate from here as well. Okay, that was your big overview. I really, really, really want you all to do this on your own. Take it for yourself. But as you are taking it, because you can only really answer on your interests, I want you to think about your students or the students that you work with or have worked with or are going to work with in the coming future. Of all the students you have or can think of right now, who would this be a good tool for? And then once you've gone through your questions, and you don't have to take it completely seriously, but you can click around and see. I want you to check out one of your top results. Leave that open, take a minute with it, and see how that works out for you. And we are going to put 12 minutes on a timer. So we're going to start now. I'm going to ask everybody to go through, take the quiz or take the interest profiler on your own. And then I'd love to hear your feedback as well. Do we like it? Do we not like it? And then we can put that in the chat. So I will come back to you in 11 minutes and 45 seconds. We have just about 8 minutes left, but as you're going through, I would love to hear anybody's opinion on the ONET so far, and then, or if you want to unmute and chat, or unmute or chat, and I'll make sure to give you guys a 2-minute warning.
Hi, it's Luma. I used this assessment this morning with a student because we were looking at the career research. And it's part of the TPP.
Yes.
And it's really great because it gives you, you look up, it's a worksheet that asks all the questions that you were asking right now. And it was funny because he said environmental engineer, and then one of the ones that came up was sanitation engineer, and he was like, oh, why is that? So he was looking that up. That's his homework, and he's gonna do it.
Oh, perfect. That's exactly what a great follow-up assignment is. Thank you for sharing, Zulma.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Michael Syracusano. I like using the interest profiler to start off with. It's just more user-friendly for me for some reason.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
definitely agree.
the same questions. It's just a little easier to see the icons and the at the end the results are all on one page.
Yeah. I that one page thing is for me one of the most valuable pieces of information because pre this, I don't know if you guys remember, we were having to look up every single one of these pieces of information before with students. I was like, oh, they did it for you. We don't have to continue this line of work just to get a little bit more information on the job. So I agree, it's so much more visually friendly to do. Oh, Barbara, in the chat, you put a great question. Is the My Next Move considering updating some of their choices? There isn't anything about computers or animals or jobs of the future. There should be quite a bit about animals. I've actually, because I was messing around with it the other day, and they might come under a different category, but they're computers, and especially what they look like now, and I'm sorry, social media type related professions, those are not something that's currently put up there. One of the things that makes this a formal assessment, because there's a lot of other interest profilers that are really similar, like Michael said, is that it is run by the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor. So it's great that they have this, yes, U.S. Department of Labor. It's great that they have done this and it's a valid and reliable measure, but it also, in order to change anything that is a formal assessment, like a whole new study would need to be done. And they should do it. I have no idea what their plans are for it. For the majority of other jobs, I think it does work well.
They have a lot of stuff. They have computer programming, bioinformatics, scientists. They have computer hardware engineers.
I mentioned the questions. The questions are all fairly conventional.
Yeah.
They don't ask a wide variety, the variety that you would expect today and today's jobs and careers that are available.
Yeah, some of them are outdated. I like using the COPS, which is the paper and pencil one, and it's very outdated, but it's my favorite one.
I wonder if I mean, there is a way to contact them, but I want to, this is a great feedback for them though. I'd want to tell them, hey, by the way, these questions need to be updated. Yes. So Guillermo, you put a great point in your comment in the chat. I could fill this out a million times over. I have, because I've taught this a bunch of times and I just click all the buttons. That is not going to give me any accurate information because I'm not taking it seriously. It's just going to give me a bunch of jobs of buttons that I randomly clicked. If you're going to get the most out of it, and what we tell students too, is if you really want to know what is in your line of interest, then we actually got to take it seriously. So do you like working on cabinets or not? Yeah, isn't it great when they get you better than you knew that yourself, Danny? All right, so you have 2 minutes left. This is your 2-minute warning. And I'm happy to hear that so many of you have also already started using this, so that's perfect. The only caveat is if you are getting a job that is not somehow teacher, I don't know how on earth you would have gotten to that point, or the transition specialist, then you're still not allowed to switch job. That's just for your retirement age when you want to do something totally different with your life. Oh, definitely, and thank you. There is a lot of points that students need to know that there's not a wrong answer. It's their interest. So the answer is always going to be right as long as it's told in truth, right? I see a lot of us are getting social and artistic, some investigative as well. Oh, realistic. You had another one. Realistic and social. It's interesting that this also does align to personality because mine come up as conventional and realistic. I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Social, realistic. All right. Well, you guys are hitting those qualities that are amongst teachers. All right, just 1 minute left. Oh, perfect. I am so happy to see that so many people are doing this. Oh, the first like enterprising I've seen. Nice. All right. I'm gonna end this just a little bit early because it seems like a lot of us are getting through, which is wonderful. And I'm so happy to do this. This is the thing about transition assessments. We give them to students all the time and we know how they work. We should, when possible, if it like you have a couple of extra minutes, take them yourself. Put yourself in the perspective of not just someone who's taking the assessment, but what this would look like for one of your students who's taking the assessment. But in order for you to really think about, oh, they're not going to understand this word, or they might need help in this area, or they won't need any help at all, it's fine. We need to know what it's like to take it ourselves. Thankfully, a lot of these are really interesting and funny, and like they give you more information, like you said, than even like other people would have known because you are taking it honestly or as truthfully as you can. That it also means you're thinking about who this would be a good assessment or exploration tool for. In general, I would not give this to a student who is dead set they are going to be a large animal veterinarian. They want this, they know about it, or like this is the thing, they have settled on their career options and it seems to be in line with something that is realistic for them. And so I would use the rest of the ONET site to learn more about those type of jobs or that specific jobs that they want to do, but I maybe wouldn't give them the full assessment and this would become an activity instead. So now what we're going to look at is reviewing what to do with those results. We're going to put them into actual transition planning. Some of us do this really well from what I'm understanding or hearing or reading in your comments tonight, which is great. But it's sometimes like translating the information to go into an IEP or an transition plan is not necessarily the most intuitive thing. And I am very much, because I told you my options were realistic and conventional, I am very much a formulaic type of person. And so I create a formula for everything. So the first things first, and so many of you who are already using this seem to know this really well, is to first explain to those students what the RISE results look like. Oh, your scores ranked you in this area, so let's look more about these areas. The ONET does give you the option to, once it presents the RISE, you can click on all of those, learn a little bit more about what it means to be a social or to be ranked more into social careers than enterprising careers. And those are great places to have conversations. You don't need to have long conversations, but a conversation. Hey, you really like social jobs. Why do you think that is? You're a really social person. You're great at talking. You're great at making friends and making people feel comfortable. Let's learn more about these jobs. So those are wonderful options. And then the job zone, I think one of the best places to have a conversation and one of the more realistic conversations to have with students related to career is how much preparation they're willing to put to, or they think that they are willing to pursue. And that is very much to say, we have students all the time who they want to be a firefighter. So that's a great job. It's amazing. However, that also requires very rigorous training, and it's not short training, I don't believe. let's say it's a 2-year training program and it's a really rigorous program, and then you also have to pass like a state board exam or something. In those situations, the student is not always thinking about how much preparation is needed and if they're even willing to do that amount of preparation to get the job that they want. They just like the job. And those are two very different things. And that's a great conversation to have. That's a very realistic conversation to have with a student. It's like, well, that's fine. It's not, further education is not for everyone, but if you're not willing to pursue further education, then this is not the right career for you. They don't generally let people who don't have medical degrees become doctors, no matter how much you want it. Like it's a tough conversation sometimes, but also a realistic one that needs to happen. The older our students get, the easier that you'd find that conversation is to have with them. More so because they're understanding those concepts, but especially if you went over it with them, what does this timeline look like? What does your level of preparation that you're willing to do actually look like? The overview of jobs, those videos and explanations. Yeah, video is a great place to start. How many of our students like live their lives on TikTok now? If they go find a video, go look for one for me about this job. I'm positive you can find one that's not even on this website. Go like make that a great next activity or assignment to do. And then the whole knowledge, skills, abilities, all of that section, every single one of these things is a conversation to have, particularly when you ask your students, what are you good at? And then they say nothing. I don't know if that happens to you. It used to happen to me all the time. It still does. I met with a student a week ago and he literally told me he has no skills. It's like, that doesn't seem right at all. He never thought about it. He's not good at a single thing he's ever done. But when we look at a page like this, and we could break down all of these areas of potential skills that we can point to, our students have strengths in a lot of different ways that they are not always thinking about. And so if I have a student this says here, one of the abilities for this job I pulled up is to be verbal, to communicate verbally and understand what people are saying, listen and understand what people are saying. If I have a student who is particularly great at this, then I'm going to tell them, you already have some of these skills. That's a great place to start. Let's look at other things that you need to work on to be prepared for this kind of future. But you got verbal down. You talk all day long. We can't get you to stop talking. You got it. But these are really good places to do that. It's one of the better things about transition and transition planning in general. You can focus on strengths as much as you can focus on areas of need. And you should with students, right? They should know that they have strengths to get to the future they envision for themselves. They also just have to start attacking those needs. And so really great places to start with students. Okay.
Doctors, may I interject something really quick?
Yes, please.
So when you have like parents who are very driven that their child is going to be a doctor, it's kind of funny because I use the same OnNet, but it's on the College Board, and then they see it more favorably.
Yeah.
You know, because the College Board has adopted the same OnNet, and it's called Big Future, what is it called? bigfuture.collegeboard.org, and it's exactly the same OnNet, but it's just associated with the College Board, and the parents see it a little bit more favorable when they look at the results.
Yeah. When you get the results from that one, does it look very similar to this?
It's exactly the same thing.
Oh, perfect. Even better.
Just,
yeah,
it's associated with the College Board, so they see it favorably.
Good. Honestly, it's I meant to mention this. It's one of those things about career exploration tools is that so many of them use that RISEX scale, and the RISEX scale itself is a valid and reliable thing. It doesn't mean that every single interest profiler is, but the one from the College Board, I would venture to guess, because they are very like rigorous organization, that they are just as valid and reliable. I would need to check to confirm for you all, but I'm going to take a big guess and say, yeah, just because it's the College Board. But wherever the information comes from and whoever needs to see it, as long as it gives them kind of a sense of understanding and they're agreeing with it, but it's far more to using the results to communicate. Like, these are things that it's already told us everything, not everything, it's given us a really big picture of what it is you need to do to be good at this type of job in the future, to have this career that you want that's going to support the life that you want to live. And then in order for us to do that, in order for us to help you get to that point where you get to be this dental technician, I forgot which one this one was pulled up as, that you really, really want to be, then we're going to pick out these areas that would be maybe the biggest things for you to work on this year or today. And that's where we're going to focus our career goals, our career preparation for. And so this is honestly one of the better places to pick that out without you having to think about like, I don't know where to start with this job. And then you got to do all this extra legwork. Let the page do it for you. Pick out with your students the areas of highest need. So we talk to our students. It's always where I attest is the number one thing you're supposed to do after a student takes an assessment is talk to them about the assessment. If when possible, and we know not every single student is having these conversations or maybe able to have these conversations in the same way that we're kind of speaking about them now. But regardless of your student's level of ability, if you and the student are able to communicate, we should communicate some of these results to them and making sure that they are aware that this is also their results, not my results. If it was my results, I wouldn't share it with you all, but if it's your results, we're going to talk about it. I mean, I guess I could share, but we're going to talk about it. It's all about you. This is your transition plan. And it would make no sense for me to give this to you and not even have a conversation. So within your IEP system, and if somebody wouldn't mind putting the name in the chat, because I sincerely forget, California uses like 3 different ones. Up where I am in Stockton, they use SACE, Welligent. Thank you. I think I was calling it Intelligent the other day. I was just like making up my own name. Welligent. So in the Welligent system, and those transition pages specifically, the results are going to go in the section that says individualized or individual transition plan, or the ITP. And depending on how we want to use the results, it can inform the education and training side and can also do employment. So let's say we do have a student who wants to be that dental technician, dental lab technician, I think is what it was. Then that information is going to feed into the actual employment, because that is a career that they're willing to choose or they're willing to look into and pursue. The education that's required for a person to become a dental lab technician and the skills related to getting towards that education, those would be better suited for education and training. But both of these sections can be informed just by that one assessment. It really depends if the job that the student has chosen or is thinking about is something that requires a lot of additional education, but even if it's like on the job training that comes with it or apprenticeship, and that's not necessarily the same as formal or continued education, we can put that into this section, education training. That would be the training side. Oh, I had these beautiful, I never make animations because I forget to use them. So for each of these sections, I put them up here by color and we'll see them next. We're gonna look first at the present level side. So that area that says assessment name and result. We know the boxes are small, so always make sure you're like, this is my tip to you. I always wrote my things in like a Word document and copy pasted it over because those boxes were too small and I'd lose track of things. And I know they'll make them bigger, but never hurts to have a system. So like I said, I was a realistic and conventional person. Every time I've seriously taken that test, it's always going to be very kind of by the book type of jobs and careers. And shock to you all, I love like data and numbers, and it makes so much more sense to me now. But that to say, when I started working on transition plans and as a transition coordinator, we always want students to have this is their individualized plan. It should look individual. It should be individualized. However, it doesn't mean that the writing of it, putting the information in, needs to be like a creative story every single time. So many of us will already use some sort of formula, even whether or not we've like called it that. We just have learned over time how to use it. And so this is the one I'm sharing with you all. I think it's just it's the one I also teach my students when we're looking at transition plans. So one that I generally think covers the basis of what is asked for in that present level section. So name of test, I always put date that the test was administered. That's very much out of habit because I see that there's a date section. But it's very much out of habit. I still put it in there. And then I always make a very short, brief statement to state whether or not that test is considered formal or informal. That is a very easy way to negate any future potential legal issues. Transition doesn't really get hit up as much as like other areas in special education for legal issues, but it doesn't mean it hasn't. And the reason it's called a legal best practice is because it has been at the subject of a court case. It's one point or another. And so to avoid any of those silliness happening, we just write whether or not the test produces valid and reliable results. If the test is not formal, meaning informal, I think the way I will show you guys when we get to that couple weeks from now, we would just write the ONET or like the assessment produces results which have not been validated, however, provide lots of useful information for XYZ. It's a phrasing of sentences. Lisette, before I move forward, let me finish this and I'll answer your question, Lisette. And then the very next part here is behavior during testing, if necessary. Not all students even need a section for this or any kind of attention to this, but some students do. And although it doesn't really feel like it's that important, especially as our students are older, because you're the one who's testing them all the time, or the main teacher or case manager is, and they know this already, or it's somewhere else in the IEP. I would still urge you to put it in there if it's relevant to the student taking any kind of test, especially if that student is going to be continuing getting services from an outside agency. The reason I say that is an outside agency like our vocational rehab it's not that they don't look at the rest of the IEP, but they're looking at the transition plan the most, if anything. And so if that's the case, then we want everyone to be able to know when Jamie takes a test, they struggle. And we might need to think about presenting tests or anything like this in a different way. In this case, I wrote that Jamie did just fine. All right, Lisette, you asked if the test is commercially produced. The test, I can't speak for like where it is that they all go, but the format of the test, that RISIC scale, those are also called Holland codes by research. And those are widely used and can be used by anybody who creates an assessment. It's a whole, you start getting into like validity research and stuff. For the most part, those Holland codes, the big buckets and the types of jobs available within those buckets have been standardized. And so lots of different platforms can use the exact same information. My best guess is if the example we had, the College Board looks like the My Next Move, the ONET one, then it's very likely to be from the same producers, which in this case would be Department of Labor. But I can't definitively tell you that unless I look into it. Okay, so sorry. The next part of the results of taking those results and putting them into a present levels. What we do is explain how those results or scores are presented, or how do we interpret those results. It seems silly because you just took it and it didn't take us very long to figure it out. But if you had not previously had any exposure to this and you just saw somebody get, you just saw a statement that says the student has conventional career choices, like what on earth are you talking about? It doesn't always require a giant explanation, but when it is not someone who's in the world of education, that includes our students because they don't work in the world of education, then we should just be a little bit overly explicit. Tell me what it does. It ranks our students' responses into 6 categories. For something like the ONET, that's all I needed. It's ranked. There are 6 categories, career categories. Okay, got it. And then you tell me what your students' scores or results are. So in this case, we had a student who was realistic and conventional. Can you tell who took it? That was me. And then at the very end, you can summarize. This is a little bit more optional, but I always found it to be very useful, especially to include that student's voice in there. Thank you, Anne. Is to say that we reviewed the results with the student. The student shared that those results seem accurate, how they interpreted them, how they feel about them. It includes the student's voice into this section and also confirms that the student was part of this process with you. And then the very last part for this present levels is to tell us that what the implications of these results are. So if a student got agricultural agriculture inspector and aircraft assembler, and we looked through and we see that both of these jobs have require knowledge in basic math and science skills, then I'm going to look at where the student's skill level is here or is in this area. So if I have a student who's taking junior math all the way up to junior math and they don't require senior math, but the jobs that they want are actually requiring higher level math, then I also now know what we need to do next. We are figuring out this information just step by step by step. Once we are able to state what the implications are, we can see what the current status of where our student skills are, and then we can figure out from there, is this an area of need? And if I said if it's an area of need on the present levels, I just need to make that into a goal, which is where we are now. And I know I don't have that much time left, so I'm gonna end with, or just put this out there. There is, and put the resources up there. This is completely up for you all to have and see, but I'm going to do the goals really quickly. So we are looking first at post-secondary goals and the activities that follow. And this is what the pages generally look like within your Welligent system. So for post-secondary goals, it's a very simple statement. I know many of you are very familiar with this. When we have a student who knows what they want to be, we can just insert, after graduation, I will be employed as exactly the thing. They found the job, they researched it, they're good about it. That's exactly it. When a student is torn between a couple of different options, which is also okay, nobody says that they have to pick one, just right now, then you can put, you can list the options that they're really interested in, or you can list one and say similar careers. If you get to a point where a student is interested in a job, but maybe not exactly that one, and it's time to do the ITP, this might be a pretty good way to go. When you have a student who is still exploring, completely not certain, but they may have gotten those big categories, and this is perfectly fine when they're younger, or if they're still exploring, we try to get them away from still exploring when they're a little bit older. But if this is the case, then I would put something like, after graduation, I will be employed in a career interest that's related to those areas that I scored highest in. All right. Oh, sorry. So then we look at the activity. That's our big goal. We look at the activities of what is going to help us this year get to that big goal one day. This is the best way I can explain it to my students. We have a big goal and like a baby goal. Big goal is the thing I'm going to do 10 years from now or 2 years from now, whichever timeline there is that they're kind of looking at. But my baby goal, the thing that I can do this year, it's one little goal. It's not a big deal. That's 100% how I've told my students that you can do one thing, and that's just one thing we're doing this year. The one baby goal thing that we're going to do this year is, or the activity that's going to help us get to this big goal. I emphasize very much so to all teachers I work with that we want to make this activity something that is a process to growing and learning and not just a one-shot activity. And a one-shot activity, although very helpful sometimes, is not something that is going to last very long. In terms of like skills that grow. So filling out a job application, useful. What did they learn from it? Was it just to fill out a job application, or was there something else that they were supposed to get from it? Creating a resume, very useful. How many times have you created a resume with a student and then never touch it again? Happens. We don't want just a thing that can be done and then tossed away. We want something that's going to make the students kind of expand those skill areas, make it into a process instead. So something like participating in mock job interviews, getting feedback, doing it again, getting feedback, doing it again, preparing them for something that's a little bit more than just getting a job, but it's communicating information. It's keeping your cool and not getting too nervous. Those are all skills that are, or areas that are related and very important for our students. We also, one that I like to put up there, because not a lot of people think about this as an activity, is having your students set their own goal and then tracking it themselves, if possible. If this is something within a student's capability, I try very hard, even if it doesn't go into my ITP, I try really hard to make them be responsible for it, especially if I'm a coordinator and not necessarily their everyday teacher. Then I this is your goal and you need to be responsible for it, because I won't be able to see you for another month at least. And so I want your tracking. I want to see how you're doing with it. You need to be in charge of your own goals. I can't be in charge of them. This is your life. I have my goals. So here are some examples, and I think with examples, you always need to present non-examples. So we need to be able to tell people, this is something that is a good version, and this is something that may not be the world's best version of the thing that we need. So goal or activity A, when selecting academic and elective courses for senior year, Jamie will register for at least one available course that will help them prepare for a career in a realistic or conventional profession. So if a student has the ability to get to kind of make their own schedule, especially in the like last senior year of high school thing, and they just wanted to take like all the blow off classes. But Jamie, we just learned that you are really interested in these math and science jobs, and that also means you're gonna have to go to college. Let's look at college requirements. Do they want 4 years of math? Does it look better for you to take 4 years of math and it's related to the thing that like building these skills so you don't lose it? And you can have these conversations with them, knowing that at the end of the day, it is your students' own schedule. Like, and then, if they can choose their own schedule, they should. But making them be very aware to consider that they should register for at least one of these classes. Maybe there's like a social skills class, and we have a student who needs to really work on these things before they go off and work as a pet groomer or something, where they need to talk to people. It's not just all pets all the time. So all of these things end up being very helpful, or like having a student think about this as a process, not just I'm going to sign up for this class. Why would I do this? What is it going to help me figure out? What other skills am I gaining or learning, even if they're not fully verbalizing what those skills are? They're building on some of these other prerequisite areas that they have to be able to do really well in their future. So that would be a really good example of more of a robust activity that's a process. When we look at something that is like section or the activity in B, filling out a job application, that's just filling out a job application. It's not that it's not useful, it's that filling out a job application is not really helping me or helping my student do anything other than filling out a job application. The other one that we see quite a bit is filling out 3 job applications. 3 is better than 1, but what did it really do other than you submitted it and you're not going to hear back from these places, and we're not going to talk about it again. That's not, or I mean, hopefully they hear back, but that's not something that's really emphasizing growth. Okay. Gosh, when I want to talk fast, I just can't. I think this is one of my last slides too. So many of you in the chat, and also in our break, or not break, in our practice time, we're looking at or talking about the things that you do with students after you've taken this, or after they've taken their assessment. One of the ways that sometimes a lot of teachers struggle with is like teaching transition, not always realizing that we do things to teach transition constantly, all the time. And so I tend to think about like teaching transition so much more in terms of questions that get conversations started and that get us to look up things and to kind of move us forward in our thoughts and our planning. And so the first one, I broke it down by those same sections that the ONET gives us as like a breakdown for all of those jobs. So the first one there, the breakdown of knowledge. So if it's the knowledge section for that dental technician position is saying that the student needs advanced math and science, then the question, like I presented here for our fake student Jamie, is what courses do I need to take? And then that's another way to go of when I get to college, what major do I need to be in? What courses are in that major? And now you've kind of looked more into the education side. Or when a job has more of a technical skill that doesn't quite require the same level of formal education, what credential or online trainings can I do? Something like with tech, you don't always have to go to college to work in the field of technology. What lots of people do instead is get certified for certain coding languages and programs online. And they pay the course, they do the certification, they can now come into an entry-level job making quite a lot of money depending on where it is that they're going. And so for knowledge in that specific scenario, it's more about what can I do, or what courses or resources are going to help me gain this knowledge. And that's something that begins a whole discussion. We didn't even, students especially didn't know that these were things that they could be looking at, had access to, should look at while they're in school, while they have a lot of free resources to use. And then we can use the ONET, but there's also the big wide world of the internet. Show me where else we can learn this information. And that's a great task to give students. Tomorrow, I want you to find one more example of where you can get this credential course done. When we look at personality, this is something a lot of our students need support in. And it's not just like type of personality, but it's a realization that not many have at that young age, is that a lot of careers or jobs are held by people who have good personalities rather than people who are great at the actual task. It's about like half and half. And it's actually been studied, especially with individuals with disabilities. Somebody's ability to maintain a job is sometimes very predicated on their like ability to be a good coworker, on their ability to communicate really well, or to just be willing to do things. And it's not always just how good you are at a job. You can be great at doing something, but if your personality is very rough, then you may not last in a job very long. It doesn't matter if you're really, really good at doing this thing. And so knowing or having students really understand that holding a career, especially one that they really want to do, is, yes, you need that actual knowledge, but you also need to know how to be a good personality to work with, or somebody who fits the personality of this career area. And so you could break those things down, especially for our students who have trouble with their peers or who have trouble connecting with adults. The world of no high school is all adults, and they should probably know that. It's pretty important because they're going to be interacting with adults for the rest of their lives. And then we look at skills and abilities, and this section here is, well, similar, but there's lots of different skills that were listed. So what does it mean to have people skills? What does it mean to have good communication skills? What does it mean to have skills in this very specific technical areas? The ONET My Next Move site does provide actually a number of videos for skills now that they, I understand that they're adding them into this. But we can have students look up information, look up videos or different, make their own definitions. This is a great group activity. I want this whole class, we're going to come up with one definition today. Tell me everything that we need to know about people skills. And we're going to make this into a good sentence. And now this good sentence that we created to define people skills, we're going to figure out how we can improve our areas according to this definition. Things like that would make good activities, but also make someone think about maybe the way you define something like people skills is not necessarily the way that this career area defines it. And we need to reconcile what those two things mean if you really, really want to be in this career area. And then that very last part, I combined education, technology, and Outlook. But really, this is a great place to have that conversation with students of, you decided you want to be an oral surgeon. Wonderful. It's a long level of education that you need to know of, or long career path or education path that you're going to pursue before you get into your career. And so how do you get into this education path? What do you need to do? Now, it could be looking at like what local colleges are available, but you might want to be thinking further in the future. How do you get into a dental school? Did you know dental schools are harder to get into than medical school? Like, you have these conversations. Students should know about these things ahead of time, instead of they get into college, then their second year, and they're like, wow, nobody told me it was so hard to get into dental school. And at the very least, we made that statement happen before. Another really great question to ask students is, does the career, this is one of the better questions to ask students actually, does the career support my life aspirations? And a lot of the times we know our students have, they're all going to live in mansions. They're all going to drive the new cool sports car or whatever. You could tell I'm not in tune with what students all want, but they big, beautiful, lofty goals for themselves, and we hope that they accomplish them all. Is your career in dental tech, laboratory tech, that we saw there, the median pay is $32,000. Is that going to support the life that you're hoping to have? And lots of different conversations to have here with someone. Your students are young, they may not be thinking about the whole family part or the retirement thing, but you can have them start thinking about this related to budgeting, this related to just information that helps us plan for our futures. It's the same kind of way that they should be planning for theirs. Okay, so with our very last minutes here, I know that Anne put a feedback survey link for you all. This is all very helpful for me too. So if you wouldn't mind completing that feedback survey. And then right before you do that, I'm asking you all, and some of you have such great ideas. Looking at your results, pretend they're from one of your students. What's one section of this one sheet that you would have your you would identify as your student having a strength in or having needs in? And then what kind of something for you to walk away with and think about, what activity would you incorporate to help your students build into those needs into strength, right? That's a really great way to put it for students, by the way. Like, this is a need today. Give us 3 months. This is going to be one of your strengths. Like, we just got to work on it now, which is not something they always hear about. So I'm going to have you guys with that. And then I'll just leave this on the screen if that's okay for a little bit. There's a tiny URL there. I love talking to teachers. If you guys ever have questions or want to chat, please feel free. You can make an appointment with me at any time. My info is all there. And then just our selfless, shameless promotions. With the University of the Pacific, we do have our online teaching master's program. If any of you are interested or want to pass that information along.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you for sharing the teachers program too. That's great, the master's program. So this was awesome. I know I enjoyed seeing the overview of the ONET and getting a chance to retake it. I know sometimes we're always doing these with students, but it's good to make sure that we're kind of in line and that we are all still in the right career and that it aligns with our interests, right? So that was good to see everybody sharing out in the chat. So thank you, Balkis. The slide deck was beautiful as usual. You presented it in a great organized format. So we appreciate you being here. And I did put that feedback survey in the chat, and the resources organizer is in there as well. We'll be building on that resources organizer when Balkis returns on March 2nd. She's going to share with us about the Casey Life Skills Assessment Tool. And then next week, we are here with 2 other awesome presenters, Lynn Akura and Jose Hernandez, about sharing with us more of an in-house training on the workability data tutorials so we can get started with that data. And then please, everyone, stay on. We're going to do